I'm not going to butcher anything, but you know what? I've talked to Matt before, so let's bring Matt onto the stage. Matt, how are you?
Hey, John, I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Great, Matt. I'll give you a chance. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Cheers. Yeah. I mean, FinOps is a new-ish arena, right? But like most people, I've pivoted to it. And my pivot came from engineering. So I've got about a dozen years as an infrastructure engineer with a broad variety of experience from SaaS startup to large enterprise, from software companies to financial institutions, like physical data center build outs to cloud engineering and design. Uh, so I come with a practitioner experience, but and then a practical view on FinOps as well.
Everybody, first of all, I love our topic today. You and I were talking offline on how we created this. And, we're talking about simultaneously usage and rate optimization. And I think the best part of that title is have your cake and eat it too. Any chance you brought some cake for us?
Does virtual cake count? There's probably like an emoji for this, right?
A virtual emoji for it. Let's talk about that a little bit more. First, I want to understand, not only your usage and rate optimization. What are they?
Yeah. Do you mind if I throw up a visual aid?
Yeah, go ahead. Can you share your screen?
I will.
And we'll get you added to the stream and then you'll be good to go. Perfect.
Awesome. Great. So yeah, let's tee this up. I want to honor the concept that this is a 101. I'll sprinkle in a little 201, maybe some 301. But as you can see, we'll cover some basics. Like let's define usage versus rate optimization. Let's talk about commitment-based discounts and the challenges around purchasing or committing to them. We'll talk about the common wisdom, in other words, like the order in which you should pursue these savings opportunities. We'll talk about why usage changes in the first place, and then how we can solve some of these challenges with the introduction of automation.
All right, let's do it because I'm very curious and I've seen a lot. There was actually a couple of webinars and stuff, discussions that came out recently about usage and rate optimization. And I love the audience to understand when this comes into play during the implementation of their FinOps culture, starting out fresh, just kind of getting started.
Totally. So let's start at a high level. What's a cloud bill made of? There's sort of a chapter in the Cloud FinOps book about this, but what's a cloud bill? It's usage times rate. Super simple, right? So it's what you used and what you paid for each unit of the thing you used, right? This may vary by second, minute, hour. Some things are charged like, the first million are some rate, and then the next 10 million are some other rate. There's all sorts of different concepts here. But the point is it's simply whatever you use times whatever rate you paid for that unit. So these are the two distinct areas of opportunity for optimization or cost reduction. So usage optimization is the engineering universe. This includes cost avoidance, like the best way to save money is to not use something in the first place, right? But more commonly, usage optimization or engineering optimization is used to refer to pursuing the most efficient use of the resources you choose to use. So this is topics like right sizing, auto scaling, or scaling horizontally, leveraging spot or preemptible compute instances, instant scheduling, stopping them outside of biz hours, cleaning up orphan resources, this type of like hygiene and engineering exercises, right? Conversely, rate optimization is the financial universe. So of course, what you use in an organization is going to change over time. So the idea of rate optimization is given the current state of your architecture, your cloud maturity, because this is like a spectrum and like we grow over time, right? The idea with rate optimization is wherever we are on that spectrum, let's pay the least for whatever it is we're using today. This will change over time, right? Like in simple terms, or by definition, lift and shift workloads have not been refactored or made cloud native. And they're probably just monolithic servers running around the clock. Over time, you're going to probably, or hopefully, refine that architecture to leverage microservices, containers, Spot, perhaps serverless, right? So, but the point is, it's about paying the least for each unit of a resource throughout this journey within your organization.
Matt, I want to jump in there and talk about the usage. When you looked at, I would say FinOps has come really well known in the last couple of years, but before that, it was, I'm going to say cost optimization. So cost optimization is really the cloud usage optimization and optimizing the resources that you are using in the least efficient manner.
Yeah, exactly right. So it's a sort of like there's sort of two sides to the same coin, right? Uh, there's this rate optimization piece which needs some idea of a forecast, but then as I'm saying, like the usage side of the engineering realities are changing over time, and so this kind of begins, or you can begin to see perhaps the rift or the tension between these two concepts, right? I want to just maybe draw this another way, and this is just another way to look at kind of the same concept. Again, engineering universe on the left and financial universe on the right. I just want to use this visual to mention one more interesting thing about how these sides of the same coin are distinct. Um, and that is usage optimization has some degree of subjectivity. Now, you may challenge that and say, no, wait a second, for a given app, there is some ideal architecture given the cloud provider that you're leveraging. You can say, no, there is a right way to do this objectively from an engineering standpoint. But in practicality, in the real world, you've got operations teams and app teams and engineering teams that have specific experiences. They're not encyclopedic, right? So if you've realized that, like, for example, Linux is a cheaper thing to use than Windows, that's awesome. But if you only have .NET developers and Windows experience in your operations team, then that isn't right for you. And so to some degree, usage optimization is subjective. Conversely, rate optimization is basically just the application of objective math, right? If there is something running at a public rate or an on-demand rate, you can cover that usage, we say, or commit to it, and then receive a mathematically cheaper rate, and then have a savings outcome, right? So they're very different in this like subjective versus objective reality as well.
I actually like the analogy you use with using Linux versus Windows. When you're looking at the rate optimization, it doesn't really matter what's running on those instances because you're utilizing the services themselves. So what's on the upper layer doesn't matter because the lower layer is being used and it's all the same.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think it's really important to match, like, it's one thing. It's kind of interesting to debate like which is the best tool or technology to use. And my answer as a former engineer is it's whatever your teams are comfortable with. Like, don't invest in AWS if all of your engineers are good in Google Cloud. Like, just use Google Cloud then. Like, you'll it'll accelerate your journey, right? Um, okay, so if we've kind of separated usage versus rate, let's talk about how we achieve rate optimization. We do this by leveraging what are referred to kind of academically as commitment-based discounts. You can read the definition. I've actually just borrowed it from the FinOps Foundation because why not just use the experts? Um,
I like the attrition that you did at the bottom.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you gotta pay your respects.
Yep.
So the gist of a commitment-based discount is very simply you're saying to your cloud service provider, I promise to run XYZ instance or some certain dollar amount for the next ABC amount of time, right? It's a commitment to use this or use this many dollars over this period of time. And for that promise or commitment, the cloud service provider applies a billing discount for the running hours or for the gigabytes or for the whatever it is that you accrue throughout that active term. The kind of yellow dash box area, this is really just to convey some of the concepts that you have when purchasing commitment. based discounts. And so you've got these kind of typical terms of 1 or 3 years. The 3 year gets a better discount, but it's a longer term, and you've got to have a much more um, clear view on your forecast, right? Other things are your coverage versus discount percentage. So you could cover very highly with a thing that performs poorly or gets a poor discount, or you can get the same result if you cover less with a higher performing discount instrument, right? Break even's an interesting point. This is a little bit more advanced potentially, but let's just say in simple terms, if you have a 1 year commitment discount uh, that provides you a 30% discount, then you only need to run a workload that matches that committed based discount for 70%, the difference of 30 from one of the year, or 70% of a year, by the way, is about 8.5 months. So if you run the thing for 8.5 months, you've kind of like paid off that discount, and then everything after, so for the remainder of the year, you're now quote unquote in the money, so to speak. And lastly, the optimal coverage point. I think this is one we could probably have our own half hour on, but this is the idea that during volatile or cyclical compute usage patterns, it's like, where do you draw the line of commitment in those between those like troughs and peaks?
Matt, one of the things that I'm noticing is that we're not talking about, or I don't see like utilization. Is utilization metrics key to understand how your application or how the stuff is performing in order for you to avoid waste?
Yeah, so that's key to this concept, that last uh, green highlight there, optimal coverage point. So the common approach that we see is that folks will draw a line of commitment up to their troughs only, and this achieves perfect quote unquote utilization. It's 100%. I've not wasted any of my commitment dollars. But I guess I would answer your question with another question and say, would you rather have perfect 100% utilization and a 30% savings rate, or let's say 90% utilization and a 40% savings rate? I'd pick the latter.
Yeah, I
Right.
would
So
definitely say more. Yeah, I was visualizing the number like 3,100, 40, 90. And yeah, I would like to get more savings out of it. I mean, definitely, who wouldn't want to?
yeah, so Prosperops feels that, and I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but Prosperops feels that savings is the point and not utilization or coverage percentages. You want to optimize savings. That's what we're trying to achieve.
I like that optimized savings where you're optimizing, like, you're always looking at optimizing the utilization. If you're optimizing the savings, the most savings that you can get within your environment, then I can see it. You're
Yeah,
honestly saving more. You're achieving your results and minimizing your cloud spend.
yeah, bingo. So all right, we've broken down a little bit of um, rate versus usage optimization. We have a basic understanding of commitment-based discounts, perhaps. Let's discuss this common wisdom about how you approach these distinct concepts. My guess is everyone that's in attendance here recognizes that book, maybe has a copy nearby or saved on their laptop. Um, so I'll just skip that intro and go right to the meat of this. So there's a couple of excerpts I've snapped here. I'm going to take the time to read them, just to set the stage. So page 231, you can see they suggest that going forward, you should take into account the amount of usage optimizations available to your organization before committing to rate optimizations. Secondly, a little bit later on, usage optimization can cause rate optimization issues due to the usage you've committed to being removed based on the recommendations. It's crucial to take usage optimization into account when performing rate optimization to avoid making commitments on usage that will change. This is like the main problem, right? There's the suggestion is that you should defer your rate optimization until your usage optimization is done, right?
Matt, there's a question from the audience. I got to pull this in because we are talking about commitment based discounts. There are different types of commitment based discounts, right? And wouldn't this guide differ based on the discount instrument that you're utilizing?
Uh, That's a good question. So this is true. So I actually agree. So this wisdom holds up if you're talking about a commitment instrument with an immutable term. This would be like AWS compute savings plans, instant savings plans, like an RDS, RI, right? These have no recourse or ability to reduce point in time commitment. You can only go one way, and that's up, apart from letting them expire eventually. There are distinctly and importantly different types of discount instruments available to us. And these have other degrees of freedom. And if you use these more special discount instruments, you do not need to defer rate optimization until compute optimization is complete. And those, for example, are in Google Cloud, you've got committed use discounts because these can be merged and split. AWS standard RIs have the RI marketplace. This is where you can literally sell your commitment to a third party, which is another AWS customer. And then lastly, you have AWS convertible RIs. Convertible RIs don't have a marketplace. However, you can change any of the traits that you specify when you purchase an RI literally as often as you want. And this does not begin a new commitment term. By the way, ProsperOps uses the convertible RI as its primary mode of coverage. And ProsperOps has been using and perfecting the management of the convertible RI since 2018, actually.
Matt, are there any caveats to the convertible RIs or things that you should take into consideration when you're trying to utilize them or exchange them?
The CRI is really flexible. It's really more like on the other side of the fence. Like the standard RI has more limitations. Like for the first and last 30 days of a standard RI term, you can't offload it or sell it. There's also some recent changes to the marketplace we could get into. But the convertible RI, it's like any other RI, it's regional, so you're constrained to that region, but you can change any of the traits. So tenancy, platform, instance family, instance size, the quantity. You can literally change any of those things as often as you like. Perhaps it's worth mentioning on that standard RI marketplace change. This really wasn't a change of rules; it was a change of enforcement. The AWS service terms have always said you can't resell an RI that was purchased under a discount program. It's just that they didn't really enforce it, and that has changed the approach of some organizations and indeed some vendors. ProsperOps was really unaffected by this because, as I said, we focus on the convertible and kind of always have. So I want to transition. So I think we've talked about the current wisdom, right? Let's talk about, I mean, the whole thing that's challenging is that, as I sort of said earlier, usage changes over time. Because if it didn't, of course, savings would be very simple. You just go by the longest term you can at 100% coverage for the longest term you can buy to get the best discount, and you're done. But of course, usage changes, and to that point, this is just some stuff off the top of my head. Did I mention I was an engineer? This is a wallet.
That actually goes with our first topic of engineering-led optimization right into you're an engineer, and now we're going to go.
Yeah. So just off the top of my head, don't read all this. It's a wall of text, but this is why your compute usage may change over time, right? Lift and shift, you might kind of like size one way and then realize it can be a little different because you're going to fine tune it in the coming weeks or months. There's all sorts of cyclicality, seasonality to businesses, whether it's organic or inorganic via like M&A activity. You might move like from like a database on EC2 to a managed service like RDS. There's all sorts of, as I said earlier, like architectural efficiencies to serverless or containers or what have you. You may move away from a paid OS like Ubuntu Pro or Windows to just Amazon Linux. There's always generational updates that are coming. You may move to ARM microarchitecture. It doesn't really matter. The point is that this stuff is, I mean, anyone that's been anywhere near the cloud recognizes this stuff is always happening. So, and this is in the context that, again, the idea of deferring your rate optimization until after your usage optimization is done, to me as a former engineer is frankly kind of silly because usage optimization is never done, John. Just never ends.
I was going to ask you if this is a once and done thing because here's some of the things when you talked about right sizing, right, and optimizing your environment, and somebody analyzes it and says, "Oh, you need to right size here," and they think they're done with it, but in actuality, you've kind of tailored it towards the business and the business needs that are happening. You right sized it this month, or you kind of did some optimization for it, but it's always continuous, right?
Yeah, exactly. And sure, you might feel like you're done, for now, but think of it in terms of like if I'm buying a 3-year savings plan, are you done? Are you done with that usage optimization for 3 years? Because that's kind of the disconnect. Like the app life cycles, like it's rarely in like a 3 month block. It's more like, yeah, it's going to be like this for a year, or it's going to be this way for 6 months, and I'm going to make some changes. Let's actually pursue that. Let's just consider a singular application, and let's just say that this is one application managed by one team, and it doesn't really matter what the time scale is. It could be 2 years, it could be 8 months. It doesn't really matter. But let me just belabor this point of stuff changes just a little bit more. Um, let's say they launch an app and it's on an M6i large. It doesn't really matter. That costs something. 8760, I think in like East One it would cost on a monthly basis. Next, they realized, you know what, Graviton, an ARM microarchitecture, has better price performance. We can kind of do the same thing. So the app team and the engineers get together and they move it. And now it's going to run on that instance type. That's $70 a month versus 87. Sometime later, now it's just like, now we're just going to do a generational. We're still on Graviton, but we're going to go from an M6G to an M7G just to take advantage of the incremental performance improvements. So consider that you've bought into the idea that like convertible RIs are the way to go because unlike savings plans, they can actually be adjusted for these new realities. Where a savings plan is just a immutable 1 or 3 year commitment, and that's kind of it. So let's say you've bought into the convertible RI methodology. Here's what you'd have to do if you were managing this just one app manually. So you launch your M6i larges. Ideally, in the same moment, you buy a convertible RI. That's also M6i large quantity 1 in whatever region this is. Great. Now we change it to an M6G large. So ideally, in the same moment you make that engineering change, you make the rate optimization change. So you would have to actually coordinate the engineering side and the financial side, because if you didn't synchronize that activity, what you'd have is RIs still for M6i larges, but now that instance is gone, so you're just wasting that commitment. And now I have an M6G large that's completely uncovered because I just moved to it and I didn't adapt my financial universe quick enough. So it's kind of a double whammy. Like you're paying for something you're not using, and the new thing you have is uncovered. It's a bad situation that you'd want to avoid, right? So you can see that just on this singular application, managing or matching the financial universe manually to the engineering universe is very, very challenging.
Matt, I have so many questions from that. One, I know we're gonna have to talk about automation because you just said tee everything up and like make this change all the time. Here's my concern. I'm looking at my M6i large, right? And then I want to move over to my M6G large. And even if I coordinate this and I change from one to the other, aren't I re-upping my term agreements each time I do it? And now I've went from this is 1 year or a 3 year, and then I did it a couple months later. Now I just did another 3 year, and then I did a couple of months later, and then I did another 3 year, and it's just ever changing.
Yeah, so that's one of the many reasons Prostrops uses the convertible RI. With convertible RIs, that is not the case. Let's in simple terms, let's say I've got a 36-month convertible RI commitment. I can actually modify any of those traits. So I can make that M6i 3 year, and 34 months down the line, like with just 2 months left of the term, I can actually make that change to an M6G. And I did not begin a new 3 year term. It still expires on the 36 month. So they're very, very special in that way. If you were using standard RIs, sure, you could sell one, but then you got to buy a new one to replace it. And now if you're using standards, I've now committed to a net new 1 or 3 year term. But with convertibles, you don't have to. And it's a huge superpower.
I love Alex's comment. So what you're saying is consider convertible RIs. Yes, I think he's a. Thank you, Alex, for the comment. My other question for you, and I know I touched on it at the beginning, is automation. You just said that I have to basically coordinate my change as a person, coordinate it with finance who's purchasing or procuring it. And now what if, obviously my email didn't happen, my message, they're out on vacation. You can't do this manually, man.
Yeah, that's kind of
Oh, look,
Prosper.
there's a slide for it.
Yeah, that's kind of our assertion. Like achieving optimal savings outcomes requires automation. Like it's so hard just in that single example. Now let's imagine, you're a large enterprise and you have, tens or hundreds of thousands of instances. It's literally impossible with even a large team of humans. So real high level, Prosperops ingests engineering changes in real time, and our algorithms, again, just apply that objective math. Oh, a thing changed. Let's change my financial universe to suit. Um, Prosperops, very importantly, is not a recommendation tool. So it's not like we have a dashboard that says, oh, you should do X, Y, Z, consider this. We're literally just applying objective math around the clock, like during holidays, on weekends, during personnel changes. Like we see DIYers that have smart people doing this quite well manually, or at least well in the context of it's a human. But then like there's turnover, and now that like key resource, like we can literally see their savings drop when someone's on vacation or there's personnel turnover. Again, automation solves all these problems. Like Prosperops works when everyone else is sleeping or on vacation. You get that freedom, you get that time back. So that's super important. Let me just do a couple more.
Yep.
I know the clock's ticking, but let's look at just what we're talking about in terms of when we take the convertible RI, we pair it with automation, what can we achieve? Well, we can achieve what's impossible otherwise, like with more rigid instruments like a savings plan or a standard RI. I literally now have vertical flexibility, where like a savings plan is very horizontally flexible. Like that's awesome. It goes across Fargate and Lambda and regions, but it doesn't give me any vertical flexibility, and I can't undo a savings plan. I can just wait for it to expire. The convertible RI, when paired with automation, we can literally decline or reduce our point in time dollar amount commitment to AWS. Now, a marketing slide is a marketing slide. This, on the other hand, is an actual screenshot of a customer console of ours. You can see a dramatic reduction. This is monthly compute usage, by the way. They were spending 1.8 million a month and through engineering optimization, now spend about 600K a month. It's probably saying the obvious, but if they were committed on the left side of this graph to like 80% with a savings plan, they'd be in huge trouble with their leadership or their CFO, CTO, whatever, right? Because they'd be underwater on that commitment. But you can see that. So the green layer is the visualization for the flexible convertible RI layer that's managed by Prosperops, and you can see it perfectly tracks down that usage optimization. This is again, like you can go ahead and do your engineering optimizations, but you can still have rate optimization happening in parallel, right?
Matt, I think you should have had a cake on this screen. This was a perfect
Probably right.
analogy of.
Yeah, I should start over. So that was kind of like a macro example. Last one. This is a very typical, like more like daily utilization. So this is the very common pattern that a lot of groups have that I see in the data. And it's, very simply, you shut down stuff on the weekends, you come back up during the business days. And you can see that the flexible layer shown there in green is able to match that usage as it comes up during the business days and then back down on the weekends. And again, this is just reacting in real time. It would also cover a bubble period or any kind of like anomalous usage spike. It would cover that as well. So again, I hope it's clear that the automation and the convertible RI together are this superpower for savings.
And I got to ask the tough question. Can you go back to that slide? I have to ask the question on it because right now I'm noticing a dynamic pattern, right? Usage up and down, going and go through it. And I know that, Prosper Apps deals with a lot of the dynamic stuff, but is there a reason to have like savings plans with convertible RIs or at all?
Yeah. Yeah, super question. So the objective answer to how much savings plan do I need is the amount that covers your Fargate and Lambda, because Fargate and Lambda can only be covered by a savings plan. Additionally, you might have like other regions that are like for sandbox or dev or they're air gapped for some reason, and they just have like a couple $100 to spend a month. Savings plans are great to get coverage in those regions with small usage. That's kind of it. Beyond that, why wouldn't you want a flexible layer that has no long-term commitment risk, um, and can adapt to your engineering realities in real time? Whereas a savings plan is a rigid instrument for 1 or 3 years that has zero recourse. I mean, the answer seems fairly obvious to me. I'll let the others draw their own conclusions.
I like that. Matt, thank you so much. This has been really informative. A lot of information, not only from the entire team.